Beloved, before the noise of this world finds you, there is a quiet place where God is already waiting for you. Before your phone lights up, before the thoughts begin to pile, before the weight of everything you have to do today settles onto your chest like something heavy and uninvited. Before all of that, there is this moment, this breath, this stillness, and in this stillness, God has already been speaking. Most people wake up and immediately hand their morning to the world. The notifications pull them, the worries greet them, the mental list of unfinished things begins before their eyes are even fully open, and before they have taken a single step, they are already behind, already overwhelmed, already operating from a place of pressure instead of peace. That is not how you were designed to live. That is not the morning God intended for you. There is a difference between being awake and being present. You can open your eyes and still be asleep to the things that matter most. You can be moving, breathing, functioning, and yet be completely disconnected from the one who holds your day in his hands. And what happens in those first moments, those quiet, fleeting, easily overlooked moments between sleep and the start of everything, what happens there shapes more than you know. The first voice you hear in the morning becomes the lens through which you see everything that follows. Think about that for a moment. If the first voice you hear is anxiety, then everything in your day gets filtered through anxiety. Every decision, every interaction, every unexpected thing that rises up. You meet it all already tired, already tense, already bracing. But if the first voice you hear is God, if you allow His presence to be the first thing that fills you before anything else, then something shifts, something settles, something in you becomes steady in a way that the world simply cannot shake. That is not a routine, that is alignment, and that is exactly what this time together is. This is not just a morning prayer. This is not background noise for your commute or a ritual you perform out of habit. This is an intentional act of positioning yourself before the Lord, before the chaos gets to you first. This is you saying, before a single demand is placed on me today, I choose to come to the one who already knows what this day holds. Psalm 143:8 says this, "And let it land in you gently this morning. Let the morning bring me word of your unfailing love, for I have put my trust in you. Show me the way I should go, for to you I entrust my life." Read that again slowly. The psalmist was not asking God to fix everything. He was not presenting a list of urgent requests. He was simply asking to hear one thing first, unfailing love. He wanted the morning, before it became anything else, to carry the word of God's love to him. He wanted that to be the foundation, and from that foundation, from that place of being loved and covered and held, he then said, "Now show me the way." That is the sequence. Love first, direction second, peace before productivity. So let me ask you something, and I want you to sit with this honestly. What voice has been shaping your mornings lately? When you wake up, what is the first thing that speaks to you? Is it the voice of peace, of presence, of a God who calls you beloved? Or is it the voice of everything you haven't finished, everything you're afraid of, everything that feels uncertain and heavy and like too much? Be honest with yourself, not to bring guilt, not to add weight to something that already feels heavy, but because awareness is the beginning of change. Have you been waking up into pressure instead of presence? Have your mornings felt like you are already running, already chasing, already trying to catch up to something that keeps moving just beyond your reach? There is no condemnation in that question. Only an invitation to choose differently, to wake up not into the noise of what the world demands from you, but into the quiet of what God is offering to you. Because here is what is true, and let this settle deep into your spirit this morning. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not unprepared for what is coming. God did not look at this day and decide it was too much for you and forget to equip you. He is not watching you scramble with a look of disappointment. He is already here. He was here before you opened your eyes. He was here in the dark before the morning light came. And He is inviting you, not demanding, not pressuring, but gently, persistently, lovingly inviting you to begin with Him. That invitation does not expire. It is new every morning, and it is for you, personally, specifically, undeniably for you. So right now, wherever you are, whether you are still in bed or you are already moving through your morning, whether this day feels full of possibility or full of things you are dreading, I want you to pause, just for this moment. Take a breath. Let your shoulders drop. Let the mental noise quiet, just enough for you to feel that there is something underneath all of it, something steady, something that has not moved and will not move no matter what this day brings. That something is God. And before you take another step into this day, before you pick up the phone or respond to the first thing or start the list or begin the rush, I want you to whisper this with me from somewhere quiet and real inside of you. Lord Jesus, before I take a step, I place this day in your hands. That is not weakness, that is wisdom. That is the most powerful thing you can do with a morning. Surrender it, not in defeat, but in faith. Not because you are giving up, but because you are recognizing that the one you are surrendering to is more than capable of carrying what you were never meant to carry alone. This moment is not small. What is happening in you right now, as you pause and breathe and choose presence over pressure, this is not insignificant. Something is already shifting in your spirit. Something is already being realigned. Peace is not just a feeling, it is a posture, and you are choosing it right now. If you are here today, choosing peace over pressure, choosing presence over panic, choosing God before everything else gets a chance to speak, I want you to write this in the comments right now. I begin with God. Let that be your declaration over this morning. Let that be the first intentional thing you say today. Not because words are magic, but because agreement is powerful. When you say out loud, even in a comment on a screen, I begin with God, something in the spiritual atmosphere around your day responds to that. Heaven pays attention to the prayers and declarations of God's children, and you are His child, deeply, completely, unconditionally His. The day ahead of you is not yet written. You do not know every twist it holds. You do not know what will rise up to challenge you, what will surprise you, what will ask more of you than you feel ready to give. But God already knows. He has already been there. He has already prepared a path through it, and He has already promised that He will not leave you to walk it alone. That is the God you are beginning with this morning. Not a God who is far away, watching from a distance, waiting to see if you perform well enough. Not a God who only shows up when everything is spiritually perfect and you have said all the right words, but a God who is close, a God who leans in, a God who calls this morning, this specific morning, with all its weight and uncertainty and possibility, His, and who calls you in the middle of all of it to simply come. Come before the noise, come before the rush, come before the world gets its voice into you first. Prayer is not your last option when everything falls apart. Prayer is your first act of authority before anything begins, and that is exactly where we are going together this morning, into that authority, into that alignment, into that place where the first voice you hear is the voice of the one who loves you, leads you, and has never once lost sight of you. Something is already shifting. Stay with me. Before your feet touch the ground, heaven has already extended an invitation, because something always gets to you first. That is the nature of the world we live in. The moment you are conscious, there is already a line forming, things waiting for your attention, your energy, your response, the notifications that collected while you slept, the thought that picks up exactly where it left off the night before, the one you were hoping would be gone by morning. The low hum of anxiety that does not always have a name but sits there quietly in your chest, reminding you that there is much to do and not enough of you to do it. The world is extraordinarily efficient at filling your morning before you have had a single moment to fill it yourself. And most people genuinely, without even realizing it, let that happen every single day. They wake up reactive. They do not choose how their morning begins. They simply respond to whatever comes at them first. The phone gets checked, the news gets scrolled, the mental simulation of the day ahead begins running, cataloging everything difficult, everything uncertain, everything unresolved, and by the time they are dressed and moving, they are already operating from a deficit, already behind in their spirit even if they are right on schedule in the natural, already anxious even if nothing has gone wrong yet, already in a posture of reaction rather than authority. That is not living, that is surviving. And you were not created to merely survive your days. So the question has to be asked honestly, who is setting the tone of your day? Not who should be, not who you wish were, but who actually is, whose voice lands in you first in the morning, whose agenda shapes the first hour of your waking. Because the tone of a morning is not neutral. It is being set by something, always. Either you are intentional about what that something is, or the world will be intentional for you. And the world will not set a tone of peace. It will not set a tone of purpose or clarity or spiritual strength. The world will set a tone of urgency, of pressure, of performance, of not enough and not ready, and you had better move fast. But prayer changes the tone before the day has a chance to set it against you. This is what so many people misunderstand about prayer. They treat it as a response to difficulty, something you reach for when things get hard, when the situation is beyond what you can manage on your own, when you have run out of other options and God becomes the final resort. And while God is absolutely faithful to meet you in those moments of desperation, that is not the fullness of what prayer was designed to be. Prayer is not your emergency exit, it is your entrance. It is how you walk into the day, not how you crawl out of it. There is a moment recorded in the Gospel of Mark that is so simple and yet so staggering when you really let it settle. Mark 1:35 says this: "Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house and went off to a solitary place where he prayed." Sit with that for a moment. This is Jesus, the Son of God, the one through whom all things were made, the one who healed the sick, commanded the wind, raised the dead. And he got up before sunrise, while it was still dark, and he went to pray. Not because he was weak, not because he was uncertain, not because he had failed the day before and needed to recover. He prayed because he understood something about spiritual authority that we so often forget. That connection with the Father is not the supplement to your day, it is the source of it. Everything he did flowed from that place of communion. Every miracle, every word of wisdom, every moment of power in public was rooted in what happened in that private, dark, early morning place of prayer. If Jesus, who was the fullness of God in human form, made prayer the first act of his day, what does that say about what your morning should look like? It says that prayer is not for the weak. It is not for the people who cannot handle life on their own. It is the act of the most spiritually aware, spiritually mature person in any room. It is the act of someone who understands that the visible world is not where the real battles are fought, that the decisions made in the quiet of a morning with God carry more weight and more consequence than almost anything decided in the noise of a busy afternoon. Prayer is not falling back. Prayer is stepping forward into authority. You are not reacting to this day. You are leading it spiritually. That is who you are when you begin with prayer. Not a person behind, not a person scrambling, not someone trying to catch up with a world that moves too fast. You are a person who has already been to the place where the real power is. You have already spoken to the one who holds this day. You have already positioned yourself under covering, under guidance, under the authority of heaven, before a single earthly thing has had the chance to position you under pressure. That changes everything. It changes how you hear the hard conversation. It changes how you respond to the unexpected. It changes how you carry the weight that this day will inevitably ask you to carry. Because you are not carrying it from emptiness. You are carrying it from a place that has already been filled. Right now, wherever you are, I want you to pause and pray this from somewhere genuine inside of you. Holy Spirit, order my morning before anything else enters. That is a prayer of authority. That is a declaration that says the first one to move in my morning will not be anxiety, will not be distraction, will not be pressure, it will be you. It is an act of spiritual leadership over your own life, and it matters more than you may realize right now. Prayer is not an obligation you fulfill to earn God's favor. It is not a box you check to make yourself feel like a good Christian. It is alignment. It is the intentional act of tuning yourself to the frequency of heaven before the frequency of the world has a chance to drown it out. It is you saying, I know there is a voice that leads to life, and I am going to find that voice before I find anything else. The enemy of your peace does not fight you at noon, when you are alert and prepared. He comes in the early, foggy, vulnerable moments of a morning before you have found your footing. He comes in the rush, in the distraction, in the seemingly innocent scroll that pulls you into comparison or fear or information overload before you have had a single moment of stillness. He knows that if he can take the tone of your morning, he has significant influence over the tone of your day. But a person who prays first is a person he cannot easily reach. A person who has already placed themselves in the presence of God is already covered in a way that the ordinary distractions and spiritual pressures of the day cannot easily penetrate. This is not mystical. This is not complicated. It is simply a choice made at the very beginning, before any other choice is made. One choice made consistently that reorders everything that follows. What happens next in your day, what you encounter, how you respond, what you carry, and what you are able to release. So much of it depends on who you invite first. There is a difference between starting your day and stepping into God's rhythm. Most people start their day. They wake up, they move through the familiar sequence of things, the alarm, the bathroom, the coffee, the phone, the getting ready, the going. They do what they did yesterday and the day before that. The motions are practiced, almost automatic, and there is nothing wrong with having structure, nothing wrong with order. But there is a version of a structured morning that is completely empty on the inside, and most of us have lived inside that version far longer than we would like to admit. Routine by itself is just repetition with a schedule. You can pray every morning and it can still be routine. You can read your Bible and still be going through motions. You can show up to the same quiet time in the same chair with the same cup of something warm and come away from it having felt absolutely nothing, connected to nothing, moved by nothing. Because routine is about the external pattern. It is about what you do and when you do it and how consistently you show up. And consistency matters. Do not misunderstand that. But consistency without presence is just discipline. And discipline, as valuable as it is, was never meant to be the destination. It is meant to be the vehicle that carries you somewhere deeper. Rhythm is something else entirely. Rhythm is not about what you do in the morning. It is about who you are moving with. It is the difference between a musician playing the correct notes and a musician playing inside the music, feeling it, responding to it, allowing it to move through them rather than simply performing it. You can hit every note perfectly and still produce something that is technically correct, but spiritually lifeless. And you can also play with imperfection, but with such genuine connection to what the music is doing that everyone in the room feels it. The notes are not the point, the connection is the point. God has a rhythm, and you were made to move within it. Not ahead of it, because ahead of God's rhythm is striving, is forcing, is the exhausting work of trying to make happen what only He can make happen. Not behind it, because behind His rhythm is passivity, is delay, is the slow grief of watching what was meant for you pass while you remained stuck in yesterday. But within it, steady, responsive, present to what He is doing in this specific moment, on this specific day, in this specific season of your life. Psalm 118:24 says, "This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it." It seems simple. It is one of those verses that gets printed on mugs and wall art and used as a cheerful send-off at the end of a Sunday service. But slow down and actually read it. This is the day the Lord has made. Not a generic day, not a category of days. This one, the one you woke up into this morning with all of its particular details and particular challenges and particular weight. The Lord made this day. He constructed it. He authored it. He did not look at your calendar and shrug. He looked at this specific Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever day this is for you and said, "This one is mine. I made this. I have something in this." And then the response to that truth is not hurry. It is not rush to get it right before it slips away. The response is rejoice, be glad, not in a forced surface level pretend everything is fine kind of gladness, but in the deep settling kind of gladness that comes from knowing the one who made the day is also the one walking through it with you. That the God who authored this specific 24 hours is not absent from it. He is in the details of it. He is ahead of you in it. And He is asking you to move through it, not in panic and not in performance, but in joyful, trusting, unhurried alignment with what He is already doing. That is rhythm. Routine asks, did I do the thing? Rhythm asks, am I moving with Him? Routine measures faithfulness by what was completed. Rhythm measures faithfulness by connection. Routine can exist without God entirely. You can build a very disciplined, very structured, very organized morning that has the shape of spirituality, but none of the substance. Many people do. They feel vaguely guilty that their quiet time doesn't feel like anything. They wonder what is wrong with them. They push harder, add more structure, make the routine more rigorous, because when something isn't working, the instinct is often to do more of it, harder. But you cannot discipline your way into divine rhythm. You can only surrender your way into it. Surrender sounds passive. It is not. Surrendering to God's rhythm is one of the most active, intentional, countercultural things a person can do in a world that rewards speed and output and the appearance of constant progress. To say, I am not going to race through this morning. I am going to be present to what God is doing in it. I am going to move at a pace that allows me to hear, to feel, to respond to what the Spirit is leading me toward. That takes more strength than hustle does. Hustle is easy. Anyone can go fast. But going at God's pace, in God's way, trusting God's timing, when everything in your flesh wants to sprint, that is the harder and better thing. There is a version of you that wakes up every morning already calculating, already counting, already measuring how far behind you are, how much ground you need to cover, how fast you need to move to make something of this day. And that version of you is tired, genuinely deeply tired, not just in your body but in your spirit, because you have been running a race that was never yours to run at the pace you have been running it. And what God is offering you this morning is permission to stop, not permission to be lazy, not permission to stop caring or working or showing up, but permission to stop running someone else's rhythm and start walking in His. You are not chasing time, you are moving with heaven. Let that land in you. You are not behind, you are not racing, you are not scrambling to catch something that keeps moving away from you. You are a person walking in step with a God who is not hurried, who is not frantic, who does not look at your life and see delay. He sees development. He does not see a person falling short of the pace. He sees a person being shaped for something that takes the time it takes. His rhythm is not slow because it is weak, it is steady because it is sure. And when you begin to move within that steadiness, something in you that has been clenched for a very long time begins to open. Pray this today and mean it from somewhere real. Lord, let my life move at your pace. Not the pace of comparison, not the pace of pressure, not the pace of what someone else achieved by your age or what you thought your life would look like by now. Your pace, the pace you set before I was born, the pace you author with perfect knowledge of where I am going and what I need to get there. Let me move at that pace today. That prayer is an act of profound trust. It is saying, I believe you know better than my anxiety does. I believe your timing is more reliable than my urgency. I believe that what you are doing in me is worth the pace you have chosen for it. There is a kind of busy that looks productive from the outside and is completely hollow on the inside. There is a kind of moving through life that covers a lot of ground but arrives nowhere meaningful. Not everything that moves fast is moving forward. We have been taught, in 1,000 subtle ways, that stillness is the enemy of progress. From the time we were small, the message came in: do more, move faster, stay busy. Idle hands, idle mind, as though the moment you stopped producing something, stopped achieving something, stopped visibly moving towards something, you were somehow falling behind or falling short or failing at the basic task of being a functioning human being. The world we live in has made an idol out of busyness. It rewards the person who is always on, always available, always pushing. It treats rest with suspicion and stillness with something close to contempt. And most of us have absorbed that message so deeply that we no longer even question it. We feel guilty when we are not busy. We feel anxious when things go quiet. We feel silence not because we love noise, but because silence has started to feel like a threat. And so the idea of being still, truly, intentionally, spiritually still, feels almost irresponsible, like you are choosing to do nothing when there is so much that needs to be done, like you are surrendering ground when you should be taking it. Like stillness is what you do when you have given up, when you are passive, when you have decided that nothing is going to change, and you have accepted that. But that is not what stillness is. That is not even close to what stillness is. The moment that Exodus 14:14 was spoken into the world, the Israelites were not in a comfortable situation where rest seemed like a reasonable option. They were standing at the edge of the Red Sea with the water in front of them and Pharaoh's entire army thundering behind them. There was nowhere to go. There was no human strategy that made sense. There was no logical next step that a clever mind could calculate its way through. They were, by every visible measure, trapped. And it was exactly in that moment of total impossibility, that God said this: the Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Not figure it out, not run harder, not think your way through this. Be still. That word had to land on those people like something almost offensive. Be still. The army is coming, the water is in front of us, our children are here. Everything we have is with us, and there is nowhere for any of it to go. Be still, and yet that is precisely what God said. Because God understood something about that moment that the Israelites could not see from where they were standing, that their movement, their strategy, their frantic human effort to resolve what they were facing was not going to open the sea. Only He could open the sea. And their stillness was not passivity. Their stillness was the act of getting out of the way of what only God could do. That is what stillness actually is. It is not the absence of faith. It is the fullest expression of it. When you are still before God in the middle of something that feels impossible, you are not doing nothing. You are making the most powerful declaration available to a human being. I believe that you are more capable of handling this than I am. I believe that my striving is not what will solve this. I believe that there is a God who fights on my behalf, and I am going to stand here and let him. That is not weakness dressed up in spiritual language. That is warfare. That is the most aggressive act of trust a person can perform, because it costs something to be still when everything in you wants to move. It costs something to be quiet when everything in you wants to speak. It costs something to wait on God when your flesh is screaming that waiting is waste. Stillness is the place where God fights for you, and that should terrify the enemy far more than your most frantic attempts at control. Think about what the enemy does not want. He does not want you anchored. He does not want you settled. He does not want you in a quiet place where you can actually hear the voice of God clearly and without interference. Because a person who can hear God is a person he cannot easily mislead. A person who is still enough to receive direction is a person who will not be chasing false solutions or running down dead ends or exhausting themselves on problems that God never asked them to solve. The enemy's greatest weapon against you is noise, distraction, the relentless acceleration of your inner world until you are moving so fast that you cannot hear, cannot feel, cannot sense the gentle leading of the Spirit who is trying to guide you through what is ahead. Your stillness silences that weapon. This is why the practice of stillness has to be protected, not just as a personality preference for people who are naturally quiet and contemplative, not just as a coping mechanism for those who are tired, but as a spiritual discipline of warfare. A daily intentional act of saying, I am not going to let the noise have my first response. I am going to be still long enough to let God speak before I let anything else in. I am going to trust that what happens in the quiet is more significant than what is happening in the chaos. There is something that happens in a human spirit when it genuinely stops, not just slows down, not just takes a slightly longer pause between activities, but actually stops, actually gets quiet, actually creates the kind of interior silence where God has room to move. It is uncomfortable at first, especially for those who have been running for a long time. The thoughts rush in to fill the space. The anxiety gets louder before it gets quieter. The feeling that you should be doing something sits heavily on you. But if you stay in it, if you refuse to be chased out of the stillness by the discomfort of it, something begins to happen. The noise settles, the thoughts slow. And underneath all of it, you begin to feel something that was there all along but that you were moving too fast to find. The steady, unshakable, deeply gentle presence of a God who has not moved, who has not panicked, who has not been surprised by any of what you are facing. He is there in the stillness. He has always been there. The stillness does not summon him. It simply makes you still enough to know that he is already present. Slowing down is not falling behind. Being still is not giving up. Choosing quiet over chaos is not spiritual laziness, it is spiritual intelligence. It is recognizing that you are not the one who carries this, you never were. And the energy you have been pouring into carrying what only God can carry has not been strength, it has been exhaustion, pretending to be strength. Real strength looks like the person standing at the edge of an impossible sea, choosing not to run, choosing not to strategize their way out, choosing to stand still and watch God do what only God can do. That person is not passive. That person is the most powerful person in the room. Right now, in whatever you are facing, the thing that feels stuck, the situation that feels impossible, the weight that you have been carrying so long, you have forgotten what it felt like to put it down. God is saying the same thing he said at the edge of that sea. I will fight for you. You need only to be still. Pray this today, from the deepest and most honest place inside of you. Lord, teach me that stillness is not weakness, it is trust. Teach me to stop performing my faith and start resting in it. Teach me that the battle is yours and that my greatest contribution to it is not my frantic effort, but my steady, rooted, unwavering trust in you. Teach me to be still, not because nothing matters, but because you matter more than my movement. Teach me that the quiet is not empty, it is full of you. Somewhere along the way, you started believing that you had to earn your place in the day. Not just professionally, not just in the eyes of people who measure your output and evaluate your worth based on what you produce, but spiritually, somewhere quietly, without perhaps ever saying it out loud or even consciously agreeing to it, a belief settled into you that God's favor was something you had to maintain through effort, that His love was the reward at the end of a good day rather than the foundation underneath every day, good or not. That if you prayed enough, gave enough, served enough, pushed enough, held it together enough, then you would deserve the peace and the blessing and the sense of being held that you are so desperately hungry for. And so you hustled, not just in your work, but in your soul. You hustled in your relationships, trying to be enough for everyone. You hustled in your prayer life, feeling guilty when it wasn't long enough, or fervent enough, or spiritually impressive enough. You hustled in your identity, constantly measuring yourself against some invisible standard that kept shifting so that you could never quite reach it. You performed your faith, you performed your strength, you performed your okayness even when you were not okay, because somewhere the message got in that needing rest was weakness and asking for help was failure and slowing down was the same as giving up. And you are tired. Not just physically tired, though that too, but tired in a place that sleep doesn't reach. Tired in your spirit. Tired in the part of you that has been carrying so much for so long that you have almost forgotten what it felt like before the weight was there. Jesus looked at people exactly like that and said something that should have changed everything. Matthew 11:28, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Come to me. Not come to a better version of yourself. Not come once you have sorted out your failures and cleaned up your inconsistencies and gotten your spiritual life into a shape that feels presentable. Not come after you have proven that you are serious enough, or committed enough, or worthy enough of His time and attention. Come as you are. Come weary. Come burdened. Come with the full, unedited weight of everything you have been carrying. Come with the exhaustion and the doubt and the disappointment and the quiet desperation that you have been hiding under a composed exterior. Come exactly as you are right now. And He says, I will give you rest. Not, I will give you rest if you have earned it this week. Not, I will give you rest once you have finished being productive enough to deserve a break. He will give you rest, present tense, unconditional, available right now in this moment, before you have done a single impressive thing today. That is grace. And grace is the complete undoing of the performance mindset. The performance mindset says your value is in your output. It says you are only as loved as you are useful. It says rest is a luxury and vulnerability is a liability, and the moment you stop producing, you become a burden rather than a person. The performance mindset is the voice that wakes you up already calculating, already measuring, already bracing for the judgment of a day that has not even started yet. It is the thing that makes even your rest feel restless, because you cannot sit still without the guilt that you should be doing something. It is the reason your prayer sometimes feels more like a performance than a conversation, because you have been so conditioned to earn everything that receiving freely feels almost suspicious. But grace says something entirely different. Grace says you are loved before you perform. You are held before you produce. You are valued not because of the weight of what you carry, but simply because of who you are, a child of God, created in His image, known and named and cherished by the one who spoke the universe into being. That does not waver based on your productivity. It does not increase when you have a good week and decrease when you fall apart. It does not depend on your consistency, your spiritual discipline, your ability to hold it together under pressure. It is constant, it is unconditional, it is the very nature of the God who made you and who has never, not once looked at you and wished you were someone else. You do not have to hustle to be held. Read that again. You do not have to hustle to be held. You do not have to be impressive to be loved. You do not have to have everything figured out to be guided. You do not have to be strong to be carried. The hustle was never a requirement. It was a response to fear. Fear that if you stopped, if you slowed, if you let yourself need something, the whole thing would collapse and you would be seen as the insufficient, struggling, imperfect person you have been working so hard to make sure no one ever notices. But God already sees all of that. He has always seen all of that. And He is not disappointed. He is not looking at the places where you are tired and weak and falling short and tallying them against you. He is looking at them and saying, this is exactly why I said come. This is exactly who I was talking to. The weary ones, the burdened ones, the ones who have been carrying more than they were designed to carry, because they did not believe that laying it down was really allowed. It is allowed, more than allowed, it is invited. It is the whole point. Grace is not the reward for a life well performed. Grace is the ground you stand on before you do anything at all. It is not something you work toward. It is something you wake up inside of every single morning, whether or not you remembered to be grateful for it, whether or not you felt spiritual enough to receive it, whether or not you did anything yesterday that felt deserving of it. Grace does not operate on the economy of deserving. It operates on the economy of love. And love, real love, the kind that God has for you, does not keep a ledger. The performance mindset will tell you that this is too easy, that something this freely given cannot be real or cannot last, that there must be conditions somewhere, fine print you haven't found yet, a point at which the grace runs out and the accounting begins, because you have lived in a world that always eventually presents the bill. Relationships that seemed unconditional and then weren't, systems that promised care and then withdrew it when you needed it most. And so you learned, practically and painfully, that everything comes with a cost, that nothing is truly free, that you had better keep producing because the moment you stop, the support stops with it. God is not like that. He is nothing like that. And one of the great works He wants to do in you is the slow, gentle, thorough dismantling of every lie you have believed about having to earn what He has already freely given. You can put the performance down. Today, right now, you can stop trying to be enough and simply receive that in Him you already are. You can stop hustling for a love that is not waiting for you to earn it, but is already completely, unreservedly yours. Breathe that in. Let it be real for a moment before the day pulls you back into motion. Then pray this, and let it be the truest thing you say today. Lord, I release the need to perform. I receive your grace not because I have earned it, but because you are good. Teach me to rest in being held rather than striving to be worthy of it. Let me begin today not from effort, but from love. There is a version of peace that most people are waiting for, that God never actually promised. It is the peace that comes after everything is figured out. The peace that arrives once the situation is resolved. The answer is clear, the path is visible, and the uncertainty has been replaced by something solid enough to stand on. The peace that says, now I can breathe because now I know. That is the peace most people are holding out for. That is the peace they are working toward, praying toward, waiting to feel before they allow themselves to actually rest. And so they spend enormous amounts of energy trying to get to that place of knowing, researching, analyzing, planning, asking everyone around them what they think, running the same scenarios through their mind at 2 in the morning, hoping that this time the mental simulation produces a different result. All of it in service of the same desperate goal, clarity, because clarity feels like the prerequisite for peace. But God never said that peace would come after clarity. He said peace would come through trust. And trust, by its very nature, does not require understanding. If you understood everything completely, you would not need trust. You would simply have knowledge. Trust is what you exercise in the space between what you know and what you do not know. It is what you choose to stand on when the ground you can see ends and the path forward disappears into something you cannot map or measure or predict. It is not the absence of questions. It is the decision to bring your questions to God rather than letting them consume you. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 do not say trust in the Lord until understanding comes. They say trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him and He will make your path straight. With all your heart. That is not a partial trust. Not a trust that holds most things open to God while quietly reserving the most frightening things for your own management. Not a trust that says, I give you 90% of this and I will hold the remaining 10% hostage until I feel safe enough to let go of it entirely. All your heart, every corner of it, every fear you have been quietly nursing, every plan you have been clutching because releasing it feels like free-falling, every question that has no answer yet, every situation that has no resolution in sight, every part of your life that you have been gripping so tightly because loosening your grip feels too much like losing control. All of that, God is asking for all of that. And in the same breath, He says, lean not on your own understanding, which means He already knows what your understanding will try to do. It will try to be enough. It will work over time, trying to make sense of what is happening, trying to construct a framework that feels stable enough to rest in, trying to arrive at conclusions that bring relief even when the actual situation has not changed at all. Your understanding is not the enemy. It is a gift. But it was never designed to carry the weight of your peace. It was never built to be the foundation you stand on in the middle of the things that are too large and too uncertain and too beyond you for any human mind to fully comprehend. Your understanding has a ceiling, God does not. And that is the invitation of this scripture, to live above the ceiling of your own comprehension, to occupy a place of peace that does not depend on how much you know, or how clearly you can see, or how well you have been able to work out what comes next. A peace that exists not because everything makes sense, but because you know the one who holds what doesn't make sense in hands that are completely capable of it. That is extraordinarily difficult for people who are intelligent, for people who are naturally analytical and capable and have gotten through most of life by figuring things out. Because the same mind that serves you so well in so many areas becomes the thing that makes trust hardest, because trusting feels like stopping thinking, and stopping thinking feels like irresponsibility. If I just stop trying to figure this out, you tell yourself, then nothing will get figured out. If I stop holding this together mentally, it will all fall apart. And so you keep thinking, keep analyzing, keep lying awake running the variables, not because it is helping, not because the 200th time through the same mental loop has ever produced something the first 199 did not, but because the act of thinking feels like the act of doing something, and doing something feels safer than the terrifying surrender of trust. But here is what leaning on your own understanding actually produces, if you are honest about it. Not peace, not clarity, not resolution. It produces exhaustion. It produces the particular kind of tired that comes from trying to carry something that was never yours to carry. It produces anxiety that loops and circles and feeds itself because your mind is working on a problem that requires information and authority and perspective that only God possesses. You are trying to solve something from the outside of it when God is already inside of it, already working, already moving in the parts of it you cannot see. Your confusion about what is happening does not mean nothing is happening. It means you are not God. That is not an insult. That is one of the most liberating truths available to a human being. You do not have to understand everything that God is doing in your life in order for it to be good. You do not have to see the full picture in order to trust the one who painted it. You do not have to know the next 10 steps in order to take the one step that is in front of you right now. The path does not have to be fully visible to be real. And the fact that you cannot see where it leads does not mean God cannot. He can, He does. He has been ahead of you this entire time, in every season where you thought you were walking blind, in every chapter that felt like it had no resolution, in every moment you were certain you were lost. He was there, He is here, and He is asking you not to have more answers, not to be more certain, not to finally achieve the clarity you have been chasing, but simply to trust Him more than you trust your ability to figure it out. Peace is not waiting on the other side of understanding. Peace is what happens when you stop requiring understanding as the price of trust. Peace is the thing that floods in when you finally open your hands and say, I do not know how this works out, but I know who holds it, and that is enough. That has to be enough. That is in fact more than enough. In all your ways acknowledge Him, not just the ways that feel spiritual, not just in the prayer chair and the Sunday service and the moments that feel appropriately sacred. In all your ways, in the meeting you are dreading, in the relationship that does not make sense right now, in the decision that has no clear right answer, in the part of your future that looks like a blank page where you were expecting a map. In all of it, bring Him into it. Acknowledge that He is present and sovereign and working, not because you can see the evidence of it yet, but because He said He would make your path straight, and you have decided to believe Him. That decision, that simple, costly, profound decision, is where peace lives. Pray this today, and let it be an act of genuine release. Lord, I choose to trust You more than I trust my own need to understand. I bring You everything I cannot figure out, and I leave it in Your hands. Teach me to find peace, not in clarity, but in You. Control feels like safety. That is the honest truth that nobody talks about enough. It does not feel like fear. It does not feel like a wound or a coping mechanism or a spiritual problem. It feels like wisdom. It feels like responsibility. It feels like the reasonable, mature response of a person who has learned that the world does not always hold you gently, and that if you want something done right, if you want something protected, if you want the people and situations you love to be okay, then you had better keep your hands firmly around all of it at all times, because the alternative is chaos and loss, and the particular devastation of watching something fall apart that you might have been able to prevent if only you had held on a little tighter. And so you hold on. You hold on to the outcomes. You hold on to the people. You hold on to the plans and the timelines and the version of the future you have constructed so carefully in your mind. You hold on to the conversations you need to have and the ones you already had that you are still replaying and revising. You hold on to the things that have already happened, turning them over and over, as though if you examine them long enough, you will finally find the thing you missed, the thing that would have changed the outcome, the thing that would mean it was not as out of your control as it felt. You hold on to everything, because everything matters to you, and because somewhere beneath all the holding on is a terrified, exhausted person who does not know what happens if they let go. But here is what holding on is actually doing to you. It is not protecting you. It is not keeping the things you love safe. It is not producing the control you are reaching for. It is simply transferring the weight of everything you cannot manage onto a body and a spirit that were never designed to carry it. You were not built to hold all of this. No human being was. The capacity simply does not exist in you, no matter how capable you are, no matter how strong you have proven yourself to be in the past. There is a limit to what human hands can hold, and most people who struggle with control are already living well past that limit, feeling the strain of it in their bodies, their sleep, their relationships, their ability to be present to anything because every available part of them is occupied with gripping what they are afraid to release. Psalm 55:22 does not say manage your cares carefully. It does not say organize your cares into categories of what you can handle and what you might eventually bring to God when you have truly run out of options. It says cast your cares on the Lord and He will sustain you. Cast. That is a physical word. It is an active, intentional, committed word. You do not cast something gently. You do not cast with ambivalence. To cast something is to release it with purpose, to take what is in your hands and deliberately, decisively transfer it to somewhere else. It is the image of a fisherman throwing a net. There is nothing passive about it. There is nothing tentative. It is a full, committed act of release. And that is precisely what God is asking of you, not a reluctant, halfway I suppose I should try to trust you, letting go, but a real, whole from the depth of you casting. Take this, all of this, and throw it toward the one who is actually capable of holding it. And then He says He will sustain you. Not, He will fix everything immediately. Not, He will arrange all outcomes exactly as you would have arranged them if you had kept control. Not, everything will look the way you were hoping it would look by the deadline you had in mind. He will sustain you. He will hold you up in the middle of it. He will keep you standing when the weight of it would otherwise bring you to your knees. He will be the thing underneath you when you finally stop trying to be the thing underneath everything else. That is sustaining. That is the promise, not that everything gets resolved the moment you release it, but that you will be held through the process of it unfolding in His hands, rather than breaking in yours. Because things do break in your hands, not because you are not trying hard enough, but because there are things in your life that are simply too large for human hands to hold without cost. Relationships whose outcomes you cannot force, no matter how perfectly you manage them. Health situations that no amount of research and monitoring and anxious vigilance will fully resolve. Financial uncertainties that your most careful planning cannot completely eliminate. Children and people you love who have their own choices, their own paths, their own seasons that you cannot control no matter how desperately you wish you could protect them from everything difficult. These things live outside your jurisdiction. They always have. And the energy you are spending trying to bring them inside your jurisdiction is energy that is not available for the life God is actually asking you to live today. Releasing control is not releasing care. That is the fear that keeps people holding on. The belief that if I let go of this, it means I do not love it enough. That releasing outcomes to God means becoming indifferent to them. That trust is somehow the same thing as not caring what happens. But that is not what release means. You can care deeply about something and still put it in God's hands. You can love someone completely and still release them from the grip of your management. You can want a good outcome with your whole heart and still open your hands and say, I want this, and I trust you with what happens. Those two things are not in conflict. They are in fact the most honest and mature prayer a person can pray. Real release requires real trust. And real trust requires genuine belief that the one you are releasing things to is actually good. Not just powerful good. Not just capable of handling things, trustworthy with them, because you can believe God is capable and still not trust Him with what you love most. Capability without goodness is just power, and power without goodness is not safe. But a God who is both, who is fully capable and completely good, who holds what you release not just efficiently but tenderly, who is not indifferent to what matters to you, but is deeply personally invested in it. That is a God worth releasing things to. That is a God whose hands are safer than yours, not because he is stronger, but because he loves what you love, even more than you do, and he can see what you cannot. You have been carrying things that were never yours to carry, decisions that belong to God, outcomes that belong to God, people that belong to God, seasons and timelines and futures that belong to God. And today, in this moment, he is asking you to give them back. Not because he is demanding them, not because you have done something wrong by caring so deeply, but because your open hands are more peaceful than your clenched ones. Because the life lived in surrender is lighter than the life lived in control. Because he genuinely, specifically, personally wants to sustain you, and he cannot do that in the fullness of what it means while you are still insisting on holding up everything yourself. Let go of the weight you are never supposed to be carrying. Let go of the outcome you have been white-knuckling. Let go of the person you have been trying to manage into safety. Let go of the future you have been trying to build entirely on your own strength. Open your hands, let them be empty for a moment, and in that emptiness feel what is already there, the hands of a God who has been waiting to take what you were never meant to hold. Pray this today, and let it cost you something real. Lord, I cast everything I have been carrying onto you. Every fear, every outcome, every person I love, every situation I cannot control. I release my grip and I trust your hands. Sustain me today, not by my control, but by your faithfulness. Before the world had a chance to tell you who you were, God already knew. He knew before the first voice spoke something over you that was less than true. Before the first disappointment taught you to expect less from yourself. Before the first failure left a mark that quietly became part of how you understood your own worth. Before the comparison, before the rejection, before the season that cost you more than you have ever fully admitted. Before all of it, God knew you. He named you. He saw you completely, every part of you, every future struggle, and every hidden fear, and every place where you would eventually need to be rebuilt, and he did not look away. He looked closer, and what he saw he called good. But somewhere between then and now, you picked up a different story about yourself. It did not happen all at once. It never does. It happened gradually, in accumulated moments, in things said and unsaid, in experiences that left deposits in you that you did not choose and could not fully control. Someone left and the story it told you was that you were not worth staying for. Something failed and the story it told you was that you were not capable enough. A season went dark and long, and the story it told you was that God had either forgotten you or was disappointed in you, or that everyone else seemed to be receiving what you were somehow disqualified from having. And those stories, told enough times, begin to feel like truth. They begin to feel like your actual identity rather than lies you absorbed in your most vulnerable moments. And so the question that needs to be answered this morning is not what has happened to you. The question is, who has God said you are? Not who has the evidence of a hard life suggested you might be. Not who your worst season implied you were. Not who the voice of shame or fear or comparison has been quietly insisting you are. Who has God, the one who made you and knows you completely and has never once been wrong about anything? Who has he said you are? Isaiah 41:10 is God's direct answer to that question, not a general answer given to a category of people, a personal one, spoken to you in whatever you are facing right now. He says, do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Do not fear, not because there is nothing frightening, not because your situation is not real, or your struggle is not valid, or the thing you are facing is smaller than it feels, but because of what comes next, for I am with you. The reason fear does not have to win is not that the circumstances have changed. It is that the God of the universe is personally, specifically, actively present with you in the middle of them. You are not facing this alone. You have never faced anything alone. In every hard moment, every dark season, every day that felt like too much, he was there. He is here. And that presence is not passive. He does not stand beside you as a witness. He says, I will strengthen you, I will help you, I will uphold you. You are held. That is your identity. Not held together by your own effort, or your own discipline, or your own ability to manage your life well enough to keep it from unraveling. Held by a God who has decided that you are worth holding and who has never revised that decision, regardless of what you have done or left undone, regardless of how many times you have fallen apart, regardless of how unworthy of holding you have felt in your most honest moments. You are held completely, continuously, not because you earned it, but because he chose it. You are covered. This is not a metaphor. This is a spiritual reality that has practical consequences for how you move through the world. When God says, "I am with you," he is not speaking about a general divine awareness that encompasses all of creation equally. He is speaking about a specific personal covering, the kind that goes before you into rooms you have not entered yet, that stands between you and the full force of what would otherwise reach you, that works in situations on your behalf before you are even aware that something needs to be worked out. You are not walking into this day unprotected. You are not facing your life as an unguarded person, hoping things turn out reasonably well. You are covered. What is meant to destroy you has to go through God to get to you, and what God allows through, he has already equipped you to carry. You are guided. The same God who says, "I am with you," also says he will uphold you with his righteous right hand. That image, the righteous right hand, is the image of someone being steadied, being directed, being kept from falling by a hand that has both the strength and the perfect knowledge of where the next step is. You do not need to see everything ahead of you in order to move forward safely. You need the hand that is already there, already guiding, already aware of what is coming around the bend that you cannot yet see. God's guidance is not loud and obvious in every moment. Sometimes it is the gentle check in your spirit that says, "Not this way." Sometimes it is the inexplicable peace over a decision that made no logical sense. Sometimes it is the closed door that felt like rejection and turned out to be redirection. He guides. He has been guiding. Even in the chapters where you felt most lost, you were not outside of his guiding hand. You were being directed through the wilderness, not abandoned in it. So what does this do to your identity? It means your identity is not a product of your history. It is not assembled from what you have been through, what you have lost, what you have been told, what you have failed at. Your identity is the direct declaration of the God who made you. You are with me, you are mine, you are held and covered and guided, and not for 1 second of your existence have you ever been alone in what you were facing. That changes everything about how you walk into a room, how you approach a difficult conversation, how you hold the uncertainty of a season that has not yet resolved. How you look at yourself in the mirror on the days when you feel most like a collection of inadequacies rather than a person of worth and purpose and divine intention. The world will offer you endless alternate identities. It will tell you that you are your productivity, your appearance, your relationship status, your financial position, your follower count, your family's opinion of you, your worst decision, your biggest failure. It is relentless in its identity assignment, and most of those assigned identities are too small, too conditional, too dependent on variables that shift constantly and without warning. But God's declaration over you does not shift. He said, "Do not fear." He said, "I am with you." He said, "I will strengthen you, help you, uphold you." That was not a promise with an expiration date. That was not a word that applied to a better version of you that you need to work toward becoming. That was spoken to you, the you that exists right now in this moment, with all of your uncertainty and all of your weariness and all of the places you are still being healed and rebuilt and made whole. You are held, you are covered, you are guided. You are not who the hardest chapter said you were. You are who God says you are, and God has never been wrong. Receive that today. Let it go all the way down into the places where the wrong stories took root. Let it replace what was spoken over you by voices that did not have the authority to define you. Let it be the ground you stand on, not occasionally, not only when you feel spiritual enough to believe it, but every morning as the first truth you return to, before anything else gets a chance to speak. You are not who fear says you are. You are not who failure says you are. You are not who loneliness or rejection or shame says you are. You are whose God says you are. And he says, "Do not fear, I am with you." The world has a very specific idea of what strength looks like, and softness is not it. Strength, by the world's definition, is composed and unshakable. It does not cry in the car on the way home from something that broke it. It does not admit that it is struggling before it has already figured out how to stop struggling. It does not let people see the places where it is cracked or worn, or simply running out of the capacity to hold everything together the way it has been holding everything together for longer than anyone around it knows. Strength performs. Strength endures silently. Strength wakes up in the morning and puts on whatever face is required for the day and moves through it without letting the internal weight become visible, because visible weight makes people uncomfortable, and uncomfortable people tend to pull away, and the one thing that feels more unbearable than the weight itself is the fear of being left alone with it. And so you became hard, not cruel, not cold, but hard in the way that a person becomes hard when they have learned that softness is a liability. Hard in the way that someone becomes hard when they have been hurt enough times in the tender places that they eventually stop leaving those places accessible. Hard in the way that years of being the strong one, the capable one, the one everyone else leans on without anyone asking if you need somewhere to lean, will make a person hard, not by choice but by accumulation. Layer by quiet layer, defense by necessary defense, until the softness that was originally yours feels like something you left somewhere a long time ago and are no longer sure you are allowed to go back for. But God has never agreed with any of that. Paul writes in 2 Corinthians 12:10, "For when I am weak, then I am strong." And the context of that statement matters enormously, because Paul did not arrive at it easily. He arrived at it through what he called a thorn in the flesh, something painful and persistent and unresolved that he had begged God 3 times to remove, and God did not remove it. What God said instead was this: "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." And from that encounter, from that honest, humbling, unperformed moment of bringing his real limitation before God and receiving not the removal of it, but the grace to carry it, Paul came to one of the most counterintuitive conclusions in all of Scripture. I will boast in my weaknesses. I will not hide them. I will not manage the perception of them. I will not pretend they are not there. Because in the places where I have nothing left, God shows up with everything. And the things that look like my greatest liabilities turn out to be the places where his greatest power moves most freely. That is the theology of softness. That weakness is not where God abandons you. It is where he arrives most fully. Think about what hardness actually costs you, not what it protects you from. What it cost you. It cost you the ability to receive comfort, because receiving comfort requires admitting that you need it, and you have built an entire architecture around not admitting that. It cost you genuine connection, because genuine connection happens in the places where you are real, and hardness is a performance of a version of yourself that is always slightly more okay than you actually are. It cost you the experience of being truly known, because you cannot be known through armor. People can know your strength, your capability, your composure, but they cannot know you. And the loneliness of being surrounded by people who know your strength but do not know your softness is one of the quietest and most specific kinds of pain there is. Hardness also costs you something spiritually, because the posture required to receive from God is not composed and self-sufficient. It is open, it is needy, it is the posture of someone who has stopped pretending that they have enough on their own and has finally honestly arrived before God with empty hands and a full heart and said, "I cannot do this by myself. I need you, not as an addition to my own sufficiency, not as a supplement to my own strength. I actually genuinely, completely need you." That is the posture that heaven responds to. Not because God is waiting for you to fail before he helps you, not because weakness is spiritually superior to strength in some way that means you should cultivate limitation, but because the honest acknowledgement of your need is what opens the channel through which grace flows. Pride closes it, self-sufficiency closes it, the performed okayness that insists everything is fine and I am handling it and I do not need anything from anyone, that closes it. But the moment you drop that, the moment you let yourself be exactly as weak as you actually are before the one who is not threatened by your weakness and not disappointed by your limitation, something opens, something that was blocked by all the effort of holding yourself together begins to flow. And what flows through is not just comfort, it is power. Actual, transforming, situation-shifting spiritual power that was unavailable to you as long as you were busy generating your own. Softness is not the absence of strength. Softness is the condition in which God's strength operates most freely in you. The person who can sit in their own pain without rushing to perform their way out of it, that is strength. The person who can say, "I am not okay right now," without immediately following it with a plan for how they are going to fix that, that is strength. The person who can cry and also trust, who can be broken and also be held, who can admit limitation without it threatening their sense of worth, that person is not weak. That person has discovered something that most people spend their whole lives defending themselves against, knowing that the cracked places are exactly where light gets in, that the places where you have nothing left are exactly where God has everything available, that the softness you were taught to be ashamed of is actually the most spiritually intelligent response to a life that is, honestly and inevitably, too much for any human being to carry on the strength of their own composure. God is not impressed by your ability to hold it together. He is not more available to you when you are performing well and less available when you are falling apart. He does not look at your tears as a sign that you need to develop more spiritual resilience. He looks at them the way a father looks at a child who has finally exhaustedly stopped trying to pretend everything is fine and come home with a tenderness so complete that it undoes the very thing the composure was protecting against. You are allowed to be soft. You are allowed to be honest about the places where you are tired, where you are undone, where you do not have enough strength to generate the next thing required of you. You are allowed to stop performing and simply be weak, needy, human, real. Not because weakness is the destination, but because it is the doorway. It is the place you walk through to find that on the other side of your insufficiency is a God whose sufficiency has no limit. When you are weak, He is strong in you, not despite your weakness, not after your weakness is resolved. In it, through it, right in the middle of the specific, honest, unpolished, unperformed reality of your limitation, there He is, fully present, fully available, fully powerful in the exact place you thought disqualified you from having access to His power. Let yourself be soft today. Let yourself need something. Let the armor down, even just here, even just in the privacy of this moment with God, and bring Him the real version of what is happening inside you, not the edited version, not the version that is almost okay and just needs a little encouragement, the actual version. The tired, uncertain, stretched past its limit version that you have been keeping so carefully out of sight. He already sees it, He has always seen it, and He has never once loved it any less. Somewhere you picked up a timeline that was never yours. You are not sure exactly when it happened or where it came from. It assembled itself quietly from 100 different sources, things you observed about people around you, expectations that were spoken over you or implied by the world you grew up in, comparisons you made between your life and the lives of people whose highlight reel you have been watching without knowing anything about the chapters they are not showing. And somewhere in all of that, a timeline formed, a version of where you should be by now, what you should have accomplished, should have built, should have figured out, should have arrived at. And every morning you wake up and measure the distance between where you are and where that timeline says you should be, and the measurement leaves you with a feeling that sits in your chest, like something heavy and discouraging and very difficult to shake. The feeling that you are behind, that life is moving at a pace you are not keeping up with, that everyone around you seems to be hitting marks you are still working toward, that the season you are in has gone on longer than it should have, that the breakthrough you are waiting for is taking longer than it was supposed to, that the version of your life you were certain you would be living by now is still somewhere ahead of you, and the gap between here and there feels like evidence of some fundamental inadequacy in you, not just circumstantially behind, personally behind. Like the delay is not just what is happening, but who you are. But whose timeline is that actually? Where did it come from? And who gave it authority over how you measure your life? Because it did not come from God. God has never looked at your life and said you are behind. He has never consulted the timeline you inherited from comparison and culture and other people's expectations and found you falling short of it. He does not operate on that timeline. He does not operate on any timeline that you or the world constructed. He operates on something that is older and wiser and infinitely more trustworthy than anything the world has offered you as a measuring stick. Ecclesiastes 3:11 says, He has made everything beautiful in its time. Everything, not the things that unfolded on schedule, not the chapters that looked successful and progressive and on pace with what the world would call a life going well. Everything, the detours and the delays, the seasons that went on longer than made sense, the things that were supposed to happen that didn't, and the things that happened instead that you never planned for. The quiet years, the years that felt like nothing was moving, the years you spent waiting for something that hadn't come yet, and doing your best to trust a process you could not fully see or understand. All of it, everything, He has made beautiful, not in spite of the timing. In its time, the timing is part of how the beauty happens. That word beautiful is doing more work than it appears to be doing on the surface. In the original Hebrew, the word carries the sense of being appropriate, fitting, complete in its season. Not beautiful in a decorative sense, as though God is arranging your suffering attractively. Beautiful in the sense of being exactly right for what it is accomplishing, exactly suited to the purpose it is serving, exactly timed for the outcome it is building toward. The delay is not a mistake. The waiting is not wasted. The season that has felt too long is not evidence that God has lost track of you. It is part of the specific, intentional, carefully timed process by which He makes everything in your life into something that is exactly what it needs to be, at the exact moment it needs to be it. You are not behind God's plan for your life. You cannot be, because His plan is not a fixed external schedule that you are either keeping pace with or failing to keep pace with. His plan is alive, responsive, sovereign over every variable, including the ones that feel like they have derailed everything. His plan accounts for what you went through. It accounts for what took longer than expected, what broke before it could be built right, what needed to be lost before you could receive what was actually meant for you. You are not behind His plan, you are inside it. Right now, in this very season that feels like delay, you are inside the plan of a God who does not make mistakes about timing. Think about the things in your life that you are most grateful for, the relationships that matter most, the growth that runs deepest, the character that was formed through the things that were hardest. Now think about whether any of that came on schedule, whether any of the things that produced the most real and lasting fruit in your life arrived when you expected them to, in the form you expected them, through the path you would have chosen. Almost certainly not, because God's most significant work in a person's life rarely looks like efficiency from the inside. It looks like wilderness, it looks like waiting, it looks like a season that seems to have no resolution and no clear purpose and no visible movement toward anything. And then one day, at exactly the right time, in exactly the right way, producing exactly what nothing else could have produced, the beauty of it becomes visible, and you understand in that moment that there was no delay. There was only a timeline you could not see, being executed with a precision you were not yet in a position to appreciate. The person you are becoming in this season, the depth being formed in you, the faith being built in the places where things have not gone according to plan, the compassion being developed through the chapters that have cost you, that person cannot be rushed into existence. That depth does not come from a life that moved smoothly and on schedule and without seasons of unexplained waiting. It comes from exactly this, from the kind of trust that is only possible when you cannot see what is happening, from the kind of faith that is only built in the spaces where understanding runs out, and all you have left is a God who said He makes everything beautiful, and a choice about whether you are going to believe that on the days when it is the least visible. Stop measuring your life against the timeline of people who are not living your life. Stop measuring it against the version of yourself you imagined at 22 or 30 or wherever the picture formed. Stop treating the gap between where you are and where you thought you would be as evidence of failure, as though the only valid path to becoming was the one that moved in a straight line at a pace visible enough to impress the people watching. God does not waste seasons. He does not waste years. He does not look at the chapters of your life that felt unproductive and call them lost. He calls them necessary. He calls them part of the beauty. He calls them the very soil out of which what is coming is being grown. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not a person who missed their moment or took a wrong turn that cannot be recovered from. You are a person in the middle of a story that God is writing with perfect knowledge of where it is going and perfect faithfulness to bringing it there. The chapter you are in is not the whole story. And the beauty of it, the full, complete, breathtaking beauty of what God is making of your life, is still becoming, still unfolding, still moving toward the moment when it will be exactly what it was always meant to be. Trust the time it is taking. Trust the pace He has chosen. Trust that everything is moving, even when you cannot feel it moving. Trust that the God who makes everything beautiful has not forgotten your name or your chapter, or the specific particular promise He made to you in the season when you needed it most. He has not forgotten. He is not late, and neither are you. There is a particular kind of person who finds daily dependence very difficult. And if you are honest with yourself, you might recognize yourself in this description. They are capable, resourceful, The kind of person who has learned through experience and often through necessity how to figure things out, how to plan ahead, anticipate problems, build margins and buffers and backup plans so that the unexpected never fully catches them off guard. They do not like being caught without. They do not like the vulnerability of needing something they do not already have access to. And so they stockpile, not just materially but emotionally and spiritually. They try to gather enough strength for the whole week in Sunday's sermon, enough peace for the whole month in one good morning with God, enough faith to carry them through whatever is coming so that they do not have to keep returning, keep asking, keep showing up with their need visible and their hands extended and their dependence impossible to hide. But that is not how God designed this to work. The prayer that Jesus taught his disciples to pray is one of the most theologically dense and practically revolutionary sentences in all of Scripture. And one of the most quietly radical things about it is this: give us today our daily bread. Not give us this month's provision, not give us enough to cover the next quarter so that we can plan with confidence and stop having to trust you so specifically. Not give us a surplus significant enough that we no longer have to think about where the next thing is coming from. Today, daily, one day's worth. Come back tomorrow for tomorrow. That is the design. Not because God is withholding. Not because he is making things unnecessarily difficult or testing your endurance by keeping you perpetually on the edge of not having enough, but because daily dependence is the shape of the relationship he is building with you. And the relationship requires proximity. It requires return. It requires that you not be able to get so far ahead on your own supply that you forget who the source is. The Israelites in the wilderness learned this in one of the most literal ways possible. Every morning, manna appeared on the ground, bread from heaven, provision they had not produced, sustenance that arrived without their effort or strategy or human ingenuity. And the instruction was clear: gather what you need for today. Do not store it. Do not try to accumulate enough to cover tomorrow's uncertainty. Take today's portion and trust that tomorrow's portion will come tomorrow. The ones who did not trust, who gathered extra, who tried to hold on to more than the day required, found that what they hoarded went bad. That you cannot store what was meant to be received fresh every morning. That yesterday's manna does not nourish today's hunger. That is still true. Yesterday's encounter with God does not fully sustain you through today. Last week's breakthrough does not carry enough weight to cover this week's battles. Last year's season of clarity and closeness is a beautiful memory, but it is not a substitute for this morning's returning, this morning's asking, this morning's posture of "I need you again today, just as much as I needed you the last time I came." Daily dependence is not spiritual immaturity. It is not the condition of someone who has not yet developed enough faith to need God less frequently. It is the most spiritually mature posture available. The recognition that the life you were designed for is not the self-sufficient life, but the continuously, specifically, unashamedly dependent one. Dependent not on yesterday's supply, but on a God who is faithful enough to meet you every single morning with exactly what the day requires, if you will simply come and receive it, rather than attempting to generate it on your own. There is something that happens when you stop trying to be self-sufficient in your spiritual life, when you stop treating God like the reserve tank you access when the primary tank runs dry, and start treating him like the source you return to every morning before anything else. Something settles. Something that was always slightly anxious about whether you would have enough strength, enough grace, enough peace, enough capacity for what this day was going to ask of you, begins to quiet. Because the question of whether you will have enough is no longer entirely on you. You are not trying to generate sufficiency out of whatever reserves you have managed to accumulate. You are simply returning daily to the one who has never once failed to provide what the day required. Give us today our daily bread is not a small prayer. It is one of the most honest prayers a human being can pray. It is the prayer that says, "I know what I need, and I know I cannot produce it myself, and I am not too proud to come and ask for it again." It is the prayer that strips away the self-sufficiency performance and stands before God in the simple, undeniable truth of human need. And God, who designed that need, who wove dependence into the very architecture of your humanity, not as a flaw, but as an invitation, responds to that prayer with the faithfulness that has been his nature since before you existed. He will not run out. That is the undergirding truth beneath all of this. The reason daily dependence is not terrifying but liberating. He will not run out of what you need. He will not check his reserves and find them insufficient for your particular situation today. He will not look at the specific combination of challenges and weariness and demands this day carries for you and find that he did not plan ahead adequately. His supply is not diminished by your drawing from it. His grace is not depleted by your needing it again today, after needing it yesterday, and the day before. Every morning is a fresh measure. Every day is a new supply. Every returning is met with a fullness that did not decrease while you were gone, and will not decrease while you are here. This also means you do not have to carry tomorrow today. One of the most exhausting things human beings do is try to live multiple days simultaneously, worrying about next week while trying to survive this one, carrying the weight of future scenarios while trying to function in the present moment. Jesus addressed this directly in the same passage where he taught the daily bread prayer when he said, "Do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will have its own worries." The reason you can let tomorrow be tomorrow is because the same God who is meeting you today will be meeting you tomorrow. You do not need to pre-gather provision for days that have not arrived yet, because when those days come, they will come with their own fresh supply of grace and strength and guidance. What you need is not stored in advance. It is given in the moment, fresh every morning, sufficient for the day. Come to him today with the specific needs of this specific day. Not a general request for general blessing, the particular hunger of this particular morning, the precise weight of what this Tuesday or Thursday or whatever day this is actually carries for you. Bring it with the same simple directness of that prayer. This is what I need today. I cannot produce it. I am asking you, and then watch how he meets it. Maybe not in the way you expected. Maybe not through the channel you were anticipating, but he will meet it. He always has. He will meet today's need with today's provision, and when tomorrow comes, he will meet that too, and the faithfulness of it, the daily specific personal faithfulness of a God who never sends you into a day without equipping you for it, will build in you over time a kind of trust that cannot be argued out of you, because it is not based on theology alone, but on the accumulated, personal, undeniable evidence of a God who has never once let the bread run out. You do not need to be enough for this day. You need to be dependent on the one who is. The future is the place where most fear lives, not the past. The past is finished, and while it carries its own weight and its own unresolved things, it is at least known. You have already walked through it. You have the evidence that you survived it, even the parts that felt unsurvivable. The past cannot surprise you anymore, but the future is different. The future is open, unmapped, filled with variables you cannot control, and outcomes you cannot predict, and possibilities that range from the deeply hopeful to the genuinely frightening. And the human mind, which is extraordinarily good at pattern recognition and threat assessment, looks at that openness and does not see possibility. It sees danger. It sees everything that could go wrong. It sees the worst versions of the scenarios it cannot yet verify, and it rehearses them, prepares for them, tries to think its way through them in advance so that if they happen, it will not be caught completely off guard. And so you carry the future with you everywhere, into the present moment that deserves your full attention, into the relationships that are happening right now, in real time, with real people who need you to actually be here, into the sleep that your body genuinely needs but cannot fully access because your mind is already 3 months ahead, running scenarios, calculating risks, trying to pre-solve problems that do not yet exist and may never exist. You carry tomorrow into today until today is barely livable under the weight of it. But the future is not yours to carry. It never was. Isaiah 52:12 says, "The Lord will go before you, and the God of Israel will be your rear guard." Read that with the attention it deserves. The Lord will go before you, ahead of you, into the places you have not yet entered, into the situations you cannot yet see, into the conversations and decisions and moments that belong to days that have not yet arrived. He is already there. He is not waiting at the edge of your known world to see what happens next alongside you. He has gone ahead. The future that terrifies you is not a dark, uncharted, unguarded territory where anything might happen and you are navigating alone. It is a territory where God has already been, where He has already moved, where His hands have already been at work in circumstances that your eyes have not yet reached. That is not a comfort built on the promise that everything ahead will be easy. It is not a guarantee that the future holds only what you are hoping for, and none of what you are fearing. What it is the assurance that whatever the future holds, you will not be the first one into it. You will not be walking into any room, any season, any situation without a God who preceded you there. And a God who goes before you is a God who can prepare the way, who can move things in advance that needed to be moved, who can open what needed to be opened and close what needed to be closed, who can arrange what your arrival requires before you are even aware that you are approaching it. Think about what it would mean to actually live from that reality, not just to know it theologically, but to actually feel the weight of it shift something in how you hold the unknown. If God has already gone before you into next week, then next week, with all its uncertainty and all its demands and all the things you cannot yet see or prepare for, is not an ambush. It is a prepared territory. It is a place where the God of the universe has been doing advance work on your behalf. The meeting you are dreading, the conversation you cannot see a good outcome for, the decision that has no clear right answer, the situation that feels like it could go in any number of directions and you cannot control which one, God has already been in all of it. He has not been surprised by any of it. And he did not arrive there and find it beyond him. Nothing ahead of you is beyond him. This matters enormously for how you hold the fear of the unknown. Because the fear of the unknown is, at its root, the fear of being alone in something you cannot handle, of arriving at a moment that exceeds your capacity and finding yourself there without sufficient resource or sufficient support or sufficient wisdom to navigate it well. That is the real terror underneath the anxiety about the future. Not simply that hard things might happen, but that when they happen, you might not be enough to meet them. And that fear is entirely reasonable, because you probably won't be enough to meet them on your own. Some of what is ahead of you is genuinely beyond your individual capacity, and God knows that. He designed it that way, not to set you up for failure, but to set you up for dependence, for the discovery that what your capacity runs out of, His capacity has no shortage of. He also stands behind you. The God of Israel will be your rear guard. The image is military. A rear guard is protection from behind, from what is pursuing you, from what you have already passed through that still has the ability to threaten you. God is not only in front of what is coming, He is also behind what has already been. The past that still reaches forward and tries to grab you, the old wounds that flare up in new situations, the old fears that attach themselves to new circumstances, the voice of previous failure that speaks loudest when you are approaching something that requires courage. God is the rear guard of all of that. He stands between you and the power of what is behind you to define or dictate your forward movement. You are not walking unprotected into an unguarded future. You are walking as a person who is covered from the front and covered from behind by a God who has perfect awareness of everything on both sides of you. The unknown future is unknown to you. It is not unknown to Him. And the God who holds it is not neutral about how it unfolds for you. He is not a distant, passive observer watching to see how things develop. He is actively, specifically, personally invested in what your future becomes. He has plans for you, not plans of harm, but plans of hope, plans of future, plans that account for every hard chapter and every unexpected turn and every place where the story has not yet gone the way you hoped and still moves towards something good. He cannot be separated from the future. He holds for you by any of the things you are afraid of, not by the worst-case scenario, not by the thing you are most convinced would derail everything, not by your own limitations or your own failures or your own inability to see how any of this works out well. He has already been to the end of your story. He has already seen what this becomes. And He came back to where you are standing right now, in your uncertainty and your fear and your not knowing. And He said, I go before you. I have been ahead of you this whole time. And every step you take into what feels like the dark is a step into ground that I have already touched. You do not need to see where you are going. You need to trust the one who has already been there. Release the future today, not passively, not with resignation or indifference, but with the active, intentional, costly trust of a person who has decided that the God who goes before them is more reliable than the fear that has been trying to go before them instead. Let fear stop being the first thing into the rooms you haven't entered yet. Let God be first. He already is. You just have to stop trying to push past Him with your anxiety and let Him lead. The unknown is not the enemy. The unknown is simply where trust lives, and you have a God who has never once led you somewhere He had not already prepared. You are not a finished thing. And the sooner you stop measuring yourself against the standard of a completed version of yourself that does not yet exist, the sooner you will be able to breathe inside the process of becoming the person God is making you into. Because that is what you are right now. Not a failure, not a disappointment, not a person who should have arrived somewhere they have not arrived, but a person in process, a person being worked on. A person in whose life God began something specific and intentional and good, and in whose life that same God is still working, still shaping, still moving toward a completion that he has already seen and that he has already committed himself to bringing about. Philippians 1:6 carries one of the most stabilizing promises in all of Scripture for the person who is tired of feeling unfinished. Paul writes, "He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus." And every word of that sentence is doing something important. He who began, meaning the initiative was God's. You did not start this. You did not decide one day to become someone worth completing. God began this work in you. He was the one who initiated it, who saw something worth starting, who looked at the raw material of who you were and chose to begin something in you that he intended to finish. A good work, not a mediocre project, not a work he began with mild interest and is continuing out of obligation. A good work, something he called good before it was finished, the way he looked at creation while it was still being formed, and called it good, not because it was complete, but because the one making it was good, and everything he makes carries that quality. The work in you is good, not because you have performed well enough to make it good. It is good because he is good, and what he begins carries the nature of the one who began it. He will carry it on. He will carry it, not you. You do not carry the work of your own becoming. You participate in it, you cooperate with it, you show up to it, but you do not carry it. The carrying belongs to the God who started it, and a God who chose to begin something in you has already committed to the weight of seeing it through. He does not begin things, he intends to abandon. He does not look at where you are in the process and decide the raw material is too difficult, or the distance remaining is too far, or the resistance too great to be worth continuing. He carries it. Through every chapter where you feel like you are going backwards, through every season where the progress is invisible, through every moment where you look at yourself and see so much that still needs to change and feel the discouragement of how far there still seems to be to go, to completion, not to a good enough version, not to a mostly finished approximation, to completion, to the full realized entirely what it was always meant to be completion, that God had in mind when he began. And that completion is not measured by your standards or the world's standards or the standards of anyone who has ever looked at your life and offered an evaluation. It is measured by God's original vision for you, the one he had before the world spoke anything over you, before any of the damage happened, before you learned any of the wrong things about yourself. That original vision is still the destination. Nothing that has happened in between has changed what God set out to make of you. The problem is that becoming takes time. It takes more time than we want it to, and we live in a world that has very little patience for process. We want transformation to be immediate and visible and measurable and impressive. We want to be able to point to clear before and after evidence of our becoming. We want the growth to be linear, consistently upward, consistently forward, with each day representing visible progress beyond the last. And when it is not like that, when the growth is slow and non-linear and sometimes looks indistinguishable from standing still or even going backwards, we interpret that as evidence that something is wrong, that the process has broken down, that God has lost interest, or we have failed too many times, or the work in us is somehow the exception to the promise. But process does not look like progress from the inside. It never has. The seed in the ground looks like nothing. For weeks it looks like exactly nothing. The ground is undisturbed, unchanged, giving no visible indication that anything is happening beneath it. And then one day something breaks the surface, something small and fragile and easily overlooked, and it turns out that the whole time it looked like nothing. The most important work was happening in the dark where no one could see it. That is how God works in a person. Some of the most significant transformation he does in you is invisible while it is happening. You cannot feel it, you cannot measure it, you cannot point to it. But it is happening. He is working. The process is not paused just because the evidence is not visible yet. There is also a maturity that comes from being inside the process, with acceptance rather than resistance. The person who fights the process, who is constantly frustrated with where they are, constantly measuring the gap between current self and desired self with a ruler of impatience and self-criticism, that person is not moving through the process more quickly. They are simply moving through it in more pain. Accepting that you are in process is not lowering your standards. It is aligning your expectations with the pace of genuine, lasting, God-authored transformation rather than the pace of performance-driven self-improvement. It is the difference between growing and striving. Growing is organic, rooted, nourished from beneath. Striving is effortful, exhausting, always measuring and never quite arriving. You are allowed to be where you are in the process. That is not permission to stop caring about growth. It is permission to stop condemning yourself for the distance still remaining. To stop looking at the unfinished parts of yourself as evidence of failure and start seeing them as evidence that the work is still ongoing, still active, still being carried by the one who committed to the completion of it before you were born. Think about the areas where you have changed, not the areas where you are still changing, the areas where you look back and can see that something genuinely shifted. The fear that used to paralyze you, that has less power now. The response pattern that used to be automatic that you now catch before it damages something. The capacity for trust or peace or compassion that you carry now, that was simply not present in an earlier chapter, that did not happen because you forced it. It happened because God was working, because the process, even when you could not feel it, was producing something real. And what it has already produced is the evidence that what is still underway will also be completed. You are not behind in your becoming. You are not a failed version of what you were supposed to be by now. You are a person in whose life God is actively, faithfully, unrelentingly at work. And the one doing the work has never once started something he did not finish. Be patient with yourself the way God is patient with you. That patience is not indifference to where you are. It is confidence in where you are going. It is the settled certainty of someone who can see the completion already and is not threatened by the current state of the process, who looks at every messy, unfinished, still being worked on part of you with not a single trace of doubt that it will be exactly what he intended. The work is not done, but the worker has not stopped. And he who began this in you will carry it, all of it, every unfinished part to completion. Nobody taught you how to feel things and be okay at the same time. What you were taught, mostly, was how to manage feelings, how to contain them, redirect them, push them down far enough that they stopped interfering with your ability to function. You were taught that certain emotions were acceptable in certain contexts and that others needed to be handled privately, quickly, and with minimal visible evidence that they had occurred at all. Sadness was something you moved through as efficiently as possible. Anger was something you either suppressed entirely or felt ashamed of afterward. Grief was given a socially acceptable window and then expected to wrap up so that life could resume its normal pace. And the complex, difficult, unneat emotions that did not fit into any clean category, the ones that were too big to name and too persistent to dismiss, those you simply learned to live around, building your daily life in the spaces between them, hoping they would eventually dissolve on their own if you gave them enough time and kept yourself busy enough not to have to face them directly. But they do not dissolve. They go underground. And what goes underground does not disappear. It grows roots. The suppressed grief becomes a low-grade numbness that makes it hard to feel fully present to anything joyful. The unacknowledged anger becomes a bitterness that colors relationships you did not intend to damage. The pushed-down fear becomes anxiety that has lost its original shape and now attaches itself to everything. A formless dread that cannot be reasoned with because you can no longer trace it to its source. Unfelt feelings do not simply evaporate because you refuse to feel them. They find other ways to make themselves known. They speak through your body, through your reactions, through the disproportionate response you sometimes have to small things that carries the weight of 100 large things you never let yourself process. God never asked you to perform emotional wellness. He asked you to bring him what is real. Psalm 34:18 says, "The Lord is close to the broken-hearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." This is not a verse about recovering from heartbreak. This is a verse about where God positions himself in relation to human pain. Close, not at a comfortable, respectable spiritual distance where the messiness of your grief cannot reach him. Not available once you have pulled yourself together enough to present your pain in a form that feels appropriate for prayer. Close, present, Right there in the exact location of the breaking, at the precise moment of the crushing, before you have had any time to compose yourself or contextualize what is happening or figure out what it means theologically. The broken-hearted, not the almost healed, not the previously broken-hearted who have now made significant progress toward resolution. The broken-hearted, present tense, actively breaking, currently undone, that is who God is close to. That is the person he moves toward rather than away from. And the ones who are crushed in spirit, not the ones who were crushed and have since recovered their footing, but the ones who are in the middle of being crushed, who are under the weight of something that has pressed them past the point of being able to keep themselves together. He saves those. He does not wait for them to save themselves first and then come to him for the acknowledgement. He saves them. He enters into the crushing, and he is the thing that holds them together when everything else is broken. This means that your emotional honesty before God is not a sign of weak faith. It is not something to apologize for or manage carefully so that it does not seem like you are doubting or struggling more than a mature Christian should. It is an act of genuine relationship. It is the choice to bring the real version of what is happening inside you to the God who is not surprised by it, not threatened by it, not disappointed by the fact that you are human enough to be broken by things that are genuinely breaking. The Psalms are the biblical model for emotional honesty. They are not composed, theological treatises on human suffering written from a place of resolved clarity. They are raw, sometimes desperate, frequently confused, occasionally angry conversations between a person and God that did not wait for the feelings to settle before they began. David did not pray, "My God, I come to you with a measured and appropriate acknowledgement that things have been difficult lately." He prayed things like, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me, so far from the words of my groaning?" He prayed, "How long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me?" He brought the full, unedited, unmanaged content of his inner world to God without first filtering it through what he thought God wanted to hear. And God called him a man after his own heart, not despite the rawness of his prayers. Perhaps partly because of it, because a person who brings God what is real is a person who is actually in relationship with God, not just performing one. The person who edits their prayers down to the acceptable version is maintaining a version of the relationship that is managed and presentable, but not fully intimate. Real intimacy with God or with anyone requires the willingness to be seen in the unedited version of yourself, to bring the confusion and the anger and the grief and the fear and the doubt without cleaning it up first, to trust that the relationship is strong enough to hold what is real, not just what is impressive. God's closeness to the brokenhearted is not passive. He does not simply observe your brokenness with compassion from nearby. He enters it, he meets you in it, and in ways that often cannot be explained or adequately articulated, something happens in the middle of honest, unperformed pain that is brought before God. Something shifts, not always immediately, not always dramatically, not in a way that resolves everything on a timeline that satisfies the urgency of the pain. But a presence makes itself known that is unmistakably not just your own. A steadiness arrives underneath the breaking that was not there before, a sense that even in the crushing, something holds, not the circumstances. The circumstances may not have changed at all, but something in the person inside the circumstances shifts quietly and profoundly when they stop managing their pain before God and simply bring it. You do not have to be okay right now. You do not have to have worked through this yet. You do not have to present a version of yourself to God that is further along in the healing than you actually are. You are allowed to be exactly where you are, broken, confused, grieving, afraid, exhausted, uncertain, or simply carrying a weight that you cannot fully name, but that has been making everything heavier for longer than you want to admit. Bring that here. Bring it to the God who is close to the brokenhearted, not the God who is close to the almost healed, not the God who will become present once you have demonstrated sufficient spiritual resilience. The God who is close right now, in the breaking, in the crushing, in the most honest and least composed version of what you are actually experiencing. You do not have to perform healing before you have been healed. You do not have to perform peace before you have been given it. You do not have to pretend that what broke you didn't, or that what hurt you doesn't, or that the weight you are carrying is lighter than it is. God is not waiting for the performance. He is waiting for the person, the real one, the one underneath all the management and composure and I'm fine responses. That person is welcome here, completely. without condition, without requirement of having it together first. Bring what is real. He is close to it. He has always been close to it. And in his closeness is a healing that cannot begin until you stop pretending there is nothing that needs to be healed. There is a kind of peace that is passive, that keeps itself by staying away from conflict, by avoiding the difficult conversations, by maintaining surface calm through strategic distance from anything that threatens to disturb it. It is the peace of the person who has decided that the cost of engaging is too high and that the most efficient way to protect their inner quiet is simply not to get involved, not to speak when speaking would cause disruption, not to address what needs addressing because the addressing is uncomfortable and the temporary discomfort of leaving it unaddressed feels like the more peaceful choice. But that is not the peace Jesus spoke about. That is not what he called blessed. Matthew 5:9 says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." Not the peacekeepers, not the peace preservers, not the people who maintain an absence of conflict by avoiding everything that could produce it. The peacemakers, the ones who actively create peace where it does not yet exist, the ones who move toward the tension rather than away from it, not to escalate it but to bring something redemptive into it, the ones who carry a quality of presence and a commitment to restoration that makes peace possible in situations and between people where peace seemed unavailable before they arrived. That is not a passive calling. It is one of the most demanding ones, because making peace requires engaging with what is broken. It requires being willing to enter the places of conflict and division and unresolved tension and bring something into them. Grace, truth, understanding, a perspective that neither side could see from where they were standing. It requires the willingness to be misunderstood in the process, to be seen by one side as belonging to the other, to absorb some of the friction of what is unresolved without being defined by it or destroyed by it. Peacemakers are not people who are unaffected by conflict. They are people who carry something that is stronger than the conflict they enter. And what they carry is not a technique, it is not a communication strategy or a conflict resolution methodology. It is a quality of spirit, the settled, unshakable, deeply rooted peace of a person who has received something from God that the world cannot give and cannot take. Jesus said, "Blessed are those who carry this. Blessed are those in whom the peace of God has become so real and so established that it is not disturbed by the disturbance they walk into, it transforms it." Peace as assignment means that your peace is not only for you, your peace has a purpose beyond your own well-being. The work God does in you of establishing genuine peace, peace that goes beyond circumstances, peace that cannot be shaken by what is happening around you, peace that is rooted in your identity in God, rather than in the stability of your situation. That peace is not meant to stay contained inside you. It is meant to be something you carry into every room you enter, into your family, into your workplace, into your friendships and your difficult relationships and the situations in your community that are characterized by division and misunderstanding and the slow accumulation of unresolved wounds. You carry peace into those places not by pretending the conflict is not real, not by minimizing what has caused the division or suggesting that the pain people carry is less significant than they feel it to be, but by being a person in whom something is present that is larger than the conflict, something that holds space for the pain of all sides without aligning itself with the agenda of any side. Toward understanding rather than toward being understood, toward the healing of the relationship rather than the vindication of the position. That is extraordinarily rare. And it is only possible for the person who has been to the source of it, who has spent enough time in the presence of the God of peace, that something of that peace has become genuinely their own. You cannot give what you do not have. You cannot be a peacemaker in the lives of others if your own interior life is at war. The work of peace always begins inside. It begins with the daily return to the God who gives it. It begins with the willingness to receive it freshly, to not allow it to be depleted by the conflicts you encounter, to go back to the source before you go into the places that will demand it from you. Blessed are the peacemakers. Jesus was describing the people in whom heaven's way of operating becomes visible in the earth. The people who make the character of God tangible in situations that have forgotten what it feels like, who demonstrate in the way they engage, in the way they speak, in the quality of presence they bring to broken places, that there is another way, that reconciliation is possible, that understanding can cross the distances that anger and fear have established, that the God who makes peace is not only a theological idea, but a living reality made visible through the people who carry him. Your peace is not a private possession. It is a public ministry. It is your assignment in every relationship, every room, every situation where division has taken up residence and restoration feels like a distant possibility. Carry it faithfully. Carry it into the places that try to take it from you. Carry it into the conversations that will test whether it is real. Carry it into the relationships where it will cost you something to choose it over the more satisfying options of defensiveness or withdrawal. Carry it not because everything is peaceful, but because you have found the one who is peace, and that discovery has changed what you bring wherever you go. You have been carrying something that God has already moved on from, not because what happened did not matter, not because the pain of it was not real, or the cost of it was not significant, or the mark it left on you was not deep enough to deserve acknowledgement. It happened. It cost you something. It changed things, and none of that is being minimized or dismissed or spiritually bypassed, with a cheerful reminder that God works all things together for good. What happened, happened, and you are allowed to have felt every single thing you felt about it. But there is a difference between honoring what you went through and being permanently governed by it. There is a difference between acknowledging the past and being anchored to it so completely that the new thing God is trying to do in your life cannot find any room to take root because every available space is occupied by what used to be. And somewhere in the distance between those two things, between honoring and being anchored, a lot of people have set up camp without fully realizing it, living in the echo of a chapter that has already ended, defining themselves by a season God has already closed, making decisions from the wounds of a story that he is no longer writing. God addressed this directly. Isaiah 43:18 and 19. Forget the former things, do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up, do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. Forget the former things. That is a startling instruction from the same God who told his people to remember what he had done for them, to build altars of remembrance, to tell the stories to their children, to keep the memory of his faithfulness alive across generations. And yet here he says, forget the former things, do not dwell on the past. Which means there is a kind of remembering that honors God and builds faith, and there is a kind of dwelling that prevents you from receiving what he is doing now. There is a difference between looking back in gratitude and looking back in captivity. And it is the captivity he is speaking to here, the dwelling, the fixating, the inability to look forward because backward has become so consuming. Do you not perceive it? That question should land like something, because embedded in it is the implication that the new thing is already springing up, already present, already moving, already beginning to push through the surface of your life. And the question is not whether it is happening, but whether you are positioned to notice it, whether your eyes are forward enough to see it, whether you have released enough of what was to have the eyes and the heart and the expectation required to receive what is. The new thing does not wait for you to be completely over the old thing before it begins. It does not require perfect healing or perfect closure or perfect peace about everything that happened before it arrives. It springs up, right in the middle of the still healing, still processing, still figuring out what it all means season of your life. It begins while you are still carrying some of the weight of what came before, and the invitation is not to be fully healed before you receive it. The invitation is to turn your face toward it, to allow the possibility that God is not waiting for your past to stop hurting before he moves. He is moving now. The question is whether you are facing the direction he is moving in. I am making a way in the wilderness. That phrase is not incidental. A wilderness is not a place you visit. A wilderness is a place you get lost in. It is disorienting and barren and full of the particular despair of not being able to tell if you are making progress or simply walking in circles. It is the season where there is no clear path, no visible landmark, no obvious direction, just the pressing need to keep moving and the terrifying uncertainty of where moving is actually taking you. And God says, in that wilderness, I am making a way. Not, I will make a way once the wilderness is over. In it, right in the middle of the disorientation and the barrenness and the not knowing, the way is being made while you are still in the place that feels like it has no way. And streams in the wasteland. A wasteland is what a wilderness becomes when it has gone on long enough, when the season has stripped things down to what feels like nothing, when the landscape of your life looks like it has been drained of everything it once contained, the relationships that used to nourish you, the clarity that used to come more easily, the sense of purpose and direction that used to feel accessible. A wasteland is the feeling that even the things that were sustaining you have dried up. And into that specific kind of emptiness, God says, streams, not a polite trickle of consolation, streams, plural, moving, living, sustaining water appearing in the precise place that looked most incapable of producing it. New beginnings do not require ideal conditions. That is the entire point of this promise. God does not wait for the terrain of your life to become hospitable before He begins something new in it. He makes the terrain hospitable by beginning. The way appears in the wilderness because He makes it. The streams appear in the wasteland because He speaks them. You do not have to first make your life look like a reasonable environment for new growth before God will grow something in it. You simply have to release the former things enough to look up and perceive what He is already doing. This requires something that is genuinely difficult. Letting go of the old story about yourself that came from what you went through. The story that says you are too damaged for new beginnings, that too much has happened, that too much has been lost, that the version of you that existed before everything fell apart is not coming back, and the version that remains is insufficient for whatever comes next. That story sounds like wisdom sometimes. It sounds like honest self-awareness, but it is not. It is the past speaking louder than God, and God has specifically, explicitly told you not to let the past do that. You are not the sum of what you have been through. You are not the version of yourself that the hardest chapter produced. You are a person standing at the edge of something God is beginning, and the only thing between you and the new thing is the willingness to stop defining your present by your past and start receiving what is already springing up. A reset is not the erasure of everything that came before. It is the decision to no longer allow everything that came before to have the final word. It is the act of waking up this morning and saying, what God is doing is not limited by what I went through. His ability to begin something new in me is not diminished by the weight of what I am leaving behind. He is not starting with ideal conditions. He is starting with me as I am, where I am, in the middle of whatever this season still is. And that is enough for Him. The former things were real. The pain was real. The loss was real. The season that broke something in you was real. But it is former. It has been moved on from by the God who now stands in your present, saying, look here, not there, this, not that, forward, not backward. I am doing something new. It is already beginning. Can you see it? Turn toward it today. Even if the turning is small, even if it is just the willingness to believe that new is possible, that God is not finished, that the next chapter is not a diminished version of what came before, but something He is crafting with the same intentionality and the same love and the same perfect knowledge of who you are and what you need and where you are going, that He has always brought to every chapter of your life. The wilderness is not your home. The wasteland is not your destination. They are the terrain through which the way is being made, and the streams are beginning to flow. Something new is already happening. Look up and receive it. In the name of Jesus, I take authority over this day. Not in my own name, not in the name of my strength or my wisdom or my ability to hold things together. In the name that is above every name, the name before which every knee bows, in heaven and on earth and under the earth. The name that carries all authority and all power and all dominion over everything seen and everything unseen. In that name, the name of Jesus Christ, Son of the living God, I stand up over this day and I declare that it belongs to God. I am not walking into this day unprotected. I am not stepping into this morning as a person without covering, without authority, without the full backing of heaven behind every step I take. I am a child of the Most High God, adopted, redeemed, chosen, sealed by the Holy Spirit, and no power in this world or beyond it has jurisdiction over what God has claimed as His own. I am His. This day is His, and I walk into it from that position. Ephesians 6:11 tells me to put on the full armor of God, and so right now, in the name of Jesus, I put it on. I put on the belt of truth and declare that no lie formed against my mind will find a home in me today. Every deceptive thought, every false narrative, every whisper that contradicts what God has said about who I am and what He is doing, I reject it at the door. It has no access. Truth is the foundation I stand on, and truth does not shift under pressure. I put on the breastplate of righteousness and declare that my heart is covered, not by my own righteousness, I have none that is my own, but by the righteousness of Jesus Christ, placed over me like armor, standing between my heart and everything the enemy would aim at it today. Fear, shame, guilt, condemnation, none of it reaches my heart today. It is covered by the blood. I put on the shoes of the gospel of peace and declare that everywhere my feet land today, peace goes with me. I do not carry anxiety into the rooms I enter. I carry the settled, unshakable peace of a person who knows that God goes before them and stands behind them, and that nothing about this day falls outside His authority. I take up the shield of faith and I declare that every fiery arrow, every sudden fear, every wave of doubt, every attack that comes without warning is extinguished before it reaches me. My faith is not in my feelings, it is not in how strong I felt this morning or how clearly I can see what God is doing. My faith is in the character of a God who has never failed, who has never lied, who has never begun something He did not finish. I take up the helmet of salvation and declare that my mind is protected today. The thoughts that enter my mind are subject to the lordship of Jesus Christ. I take captive every thought that exalts itself above the knowledge of God. Depression, confusion, mental torment, spiraling anxiety, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. You do not have residence in my mind. My mind belongs to God, and it is kept in perfect peace, because it is stayed on Him. I take up the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God, and I declare that the Word is alive in me today. It is active, it is sharper than any weapon the enemy could bring, it does not return void, and I stand on it. Isaiah 54:17 declares that no weapon formed against me shall prosper. I receive that promise over this day. Every weapon, the weapon of sickness, the weapon of lack, the weapon of broken relationships, the weapon of fear, the weapon of failure, the weapon of the enemy's lies, spoken through any voice, none of it shall prosper against me. Not today. Not in this season, not in this life that has been placed under the covering of God's promise. By the wounds of Jesus I am healed. 1 Peter 2:24 declares it, and I receive it. Healing in my body, healing in my mind, healing in the deep places of my heart that are still being restored. What Jesus bore on the cross was enough. It was complete. His wounds were the price of my wholeness, and I do not have to earn what He already paid for. I receive healing today for every broken thing, every wounded place, every part of me that has been carrying something it was never meant to carry permanently. My God will meet all my needs. Philippians 4:19 declares that He will meet every need according to His riches in glory, not according to my ability to generate solutions, not according to how well I have managed my resources, according to His riches. And His riches do not run out. Every need I carry into this day, financial, relational, emotional, physical, spiritual. He sees it, He knows it, and He is already moving to meet it. I declare over this day that I walk in peace and not panic, in clarity and not confusion, in purpose and not distraction, in faith and not fear. I declare that every door God has ordained to open will open, and every door He has ordained to remain closed will remain closed, regardless of what pressure comes against it. I declare that the plans of God for my life cannot be dismantled by the plans of the enemy. I declare that I am held, covered, guided, strengthened, and sustained by a God whose faithfulness to me began before I was born and does not end. I declare over every person who prayed this prayer today that they walk in the fullness of who God says they are, that the chains of the past do not follow them into the future God is building, that fear loses its grip, that peace takes its rightful place, that healing comes, that what was stolen is restored, that what was broken is rebuilt, that what felt like an ending becomes the beginning of something God has been preparing all along. In Jesus' mighty name I pray. Amen. 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 Thank you for praying with me today. If you made it to this moment, through every word, every prayer, every declaration, I want you to know that this was not an accident. You did not stumble here. You were led here, because God knew what you needed this morning before you knew you needed it, and He made a way for you to receive it. You are not walking through this season alone. You never have been. And here, in this community, you have people who are standing with you, praying the same prayers, choosing the same God, showing up every morning to begin with what matters most before the world gets the first word. That is who you are surrounded by. People who choose presence over pressure, people who come back, people who understand that beginning with God is not just a morning habit, it is a life posture. If this prayer strengthened you today, if something shifted in your spirit, if something lifted that you have been carrying too long, if you felt even one moment of the peace that passes understanding, I want you to write this in the comments right now. I choose God first today. Let that be your declaration. Let that be the thing you say into the atmosphere over your life today. And then share this with someone who needs it. Someone whose morning has been more pressure than peace. Someone who has forgotten that they are held. Someone who needs to be reminded that they are not behind, not alone, not forgotten, not outside the reach of a God who makes everything beautiful in its time. This is Daily Prayer of Christ, and this is what we do here every single day. We come back, we begin again, we choose God first before anything else gets the chance to speak. Come back tomorrow and begin again with God.